eNCA reporter Lindokuhle Xulu has been following the conference for us, and he joins us now live. Lindo, how have the processes been running so far? And what's the sense coming from delegates about whether they're accepting of the decisions made, for instance, to include these quarantined votes?
Well, Anli, first, let me just tell you that the Premier of the province of Gauteng, but in his capacity as the ANC Chairperson, David Makhura, is still giving his political report. We understand that this will be his last one. It's now edging towards 2 hours in terms of since he began talking. He began talking at around 4:10. He is still going because there is a lot to report on in terms of the political report of where the ANC is in terms of some of the issues that it faces, and there are many of them that he's been mentioning here. But one of the things he just said is the fact that he is now handing over. His tenure has ended. He's handing over to a leadership that will be elected at the end of this particular conference. But I want to go back in terms of that last bite you played earlier on, the provincial secretary of the ANC in Gauteng essentially telling us that they have decided to quarantine the votes of the delegates or the delegation from Ekurhuleni. So essentially what we do understand was that there was an NEC meeting that started yesterday at around 7 p.m. and ended at around 4 a.m. this morning, and this was to delegate around issues of saying whether they want this particular conference to go on, but also in terms of the issues that they are faced with the quarantined votes that are still there at Ekurhuleni. So essentially what we've been told was that the decision was to say that yes, conference must continue today as it is continuing because it's an opening phase. But more than anything, we've also been told that the NEC decided that the PEC must be the one to handle the issues of the quarantined votes within the region of Ekurhuleni. So that is what we've been told, and that's where we find ourselves. So ultimately what that means, it means that the delegation from Ekurhuleni that will be coming here, that will be able to vote, will in fact be having their votes quarantined until all of those issues are sorted out. But I can tell you that in terms of whether delegates will accept that or not is not something that we will know up for now. It's something we'll only know when the process of this particular conference continues, and that is when there will be an adoption of credentials. So when there's an adoption of credentials, they'll need to actually explain to delegates that particular decision, but also explain what the process will be, which is to quarantine these particular votes. So it is a bit of a messy situation, but delegates will only be able to respond to that at a point where they'll begin adopting some of the credentials. But before that, there is still going to be a political, rather a organizational report, as well as a financial report that will be given, and that is exactly what we understand will be the process unfolding. Whether they'll accept it or not is something that we stand to see. But as I speak, I hear that Premier David Makhura, who is the ANC chairperson, who is outgoing here, is in fact done with his speech. As you can see, there are a lot of people that are up, some of them symbolizing who they want to take over from David Makhura or succeed from David Makhura. Some are saying Adiwele, some are saying Panya Panya. It's something we've seen all day long, but there is those issues that they'll need to sort out if this conference is to continue. The issue of Ekurhuleni remains a thorny issue of this particular conference, but we are told that that will be dealt with once they get to that part of the program where they are sorting out issues of credentials.
Thank you so much. That's eNCA reporter Lindokuhle Xulu coming to us from Benoni, where that conference continues. Our political analyst, Professor Setolego Matebesi, joins me now to continue the discussion about that Gauteng elective ANC conference. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time. And I want to kick off this discussion on the issue of security. We're going to get to the candidates in just a moment, but we've seen increasing security at many of these elective conferences. And I'd like to find out what your thoughts are on what that signals about the situation the party finds itself in.
Hi, good evening, Annalie, and good evening to South Africans. Clearly, this is indicative of a party which is under siege, and under siege not only from outside, but also from within. We have had numerous ANC elective conferences where party members were wielding guns and all that, disrupting elective conferences. But it does not bode well for the African National Congress. It sends the wrong message that this is where the ANC finds itself currently. And I don't believe that this is the right way for an organization which is more than 100 years. But believe me or not, and I think many South Africans also know this, and it's public knowledge now, that you have ANC members, ANC leaders fighting for their political life. And that's why this highly contested and contentious situation within the African National Congress, which sometimes, unfortunately, also leads to violence.
Before we speak about the two contenders for that provincial chairperson position, I want to speak about what one of them, Panyaza Lesufi, has said. And he said that political leaders should always put the party first. What happened to politicians putting the people of South Africa first?
Well, it's a very difficult situation where you will find that, yes, members of the African National Congress who has been elected to certain positions, be it in parliament, at local government level, they will say they are there on the ticket of the African National Congress, and they will have to toe the party line. But fact of the matter is, once you are in government, you also have to put the interest of South Africans first. But we have seen on numerous occasions how leaders will put, party interest first. But I think perhaps what Panyaza meant now was that it is a provincial elective conference. It is an ANC occasion. It's not a government occasion. And I strongly believe that he was right to say members should put the interest of the African National Congress first. But I mean, if the question relates to generally what is happening in the country, yes, to a certain extent, I think that it's something that has been thrown out of the window, but one should look at this within the context of what is currently happening. It is an ANC event, and I strongly believe that he perhaps referred to the ANC looking at that context.
Especially within the context of disunity in the ANC, and possibly trying to send that message that unity is absolutely essential if the ANC is going to regain voter trust. And on that point, I want to talk more broadly about these two candidates, Panyaza Lesufi and Lebogang Maile. Both of them have some issues in the past haunting them. We know that 431 million rand school cleanup on the part of Panyaza Lesufi, and then Lebogang Maile's brother's involvement in missing monies from the Alexandra Renewal Project. Nobody has a closet without skeletons, that's for sure. But let's look at these two candidates and who is likely to give the ANC the voter advantage come elections at the end of the year. Is that going to be top of mind for most of the delegates voting here?
Well, look, way even before this elective conference, ANC members have already made up their mind who they will elect, because in most instances, if you look at the affairs of the African National Congress, these affairs are being played out, they are being acted out along a slate which have been formed, I think, already maybe since 2004. You've got or 2009 in Limpopo when Jacob Zuma became the president of the African National Congress. And we know the ANC is divided along these factions. And that's why you will have members, irrespective of the well-intentioned pronouncement made by members who perhaps belong to another camp, or sometimes is neutral. They will not support that. And it's the same that is going to play out within the Gauteng elective conference, that members will make up their mind based on who they feel affiliated for. And it's not who is going to advance the interest of the African National Congress and ordinary South Africans. That is definitely not an issue. But if you look at the two candidates, both very, formidable candidates in terms of experience within the African National Congress, within leadership positions in the ANC. But perhaps from a media point of view, we all know the work that Panyaza Lesufi have been doing. In other platforms, I've actually mentioned that this is a kind of, with all the clout around him, but one should be very cautious. If you're an ANC member, perhaps ANC members have a different view because they know what is happening within the organization. But people like Panyaza Lesufi, we've seen how he responded to some of the problems, encountered by many public schools in Gauteng, almost like a proactive stance on setting. You want leaders like that, not necessarily to only look at the well-being of the African National Congress, but service delivery is a huge problem throughout South Africa, and Gauteng needs to set the tone, and that's why I think what is going to, the outcome of this elective conference will definitely have a significant impact on the outcome of the elective conference of the African National Congress come December this year.
While we're speaking to you, I want to get your thoughts on another issue, and something that comes up very frequently in these elective conferences is the ANC's step-aside rule, and that we know that Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, while releasing this latest installment of the state capture report, has lamented the state of the ANC's internal disciplinary procedures, highlighting especially the step-aside rule as being incredibly flawed and leading to a culture of wrongdoing within the leadership of the ANC. What do you make of that utterance from Chief Justice Raymond Zondo? Do you agree with him?
Yes, and unfortunately, I cannot start off by not going back to what I've repeatedly stated. I've been very consistent on that. The ANC never, ever even needed a step-aside rule. The ANC has a disciplinary procedure. They should just implement it. They've got an integrity committee, which for me has been very reactionary, and that's where the problem is. And I concur with what the judge has stated, but the fact of the matter is you've got a situation where it seems as if everybody, it's business as usual within the African National Congress. You should just look at the pronouncement of certain leaders after court cases and or at our courts, almost like showing complete disrespect. And these are leaders who are vying for key positions within the African National Congress. They themselves will tomorrow want the ANC members and South Africans to respect them. But this is it. It's a tit-for-tat situation within the African National Congress where it seems as if the center does not hold. Luthuli no longer has control over its members, but there are regions and there are cadres that has the interest of the party at heart. But sometimes when you see what is being peddled in public, it is just a huge injustice to this glorious organization.
Thank you so much for your insights. That was Professor Setolego Matebesi, political analyst, joining me to discuss that conference of the ANC in Gauteng taking place this weekend. We'll continue, of course, throughout the weekend to bring you updates from there. We have 2 reporters stationed and we'll be bringing you the absolute latest as it unfolds. Still to come on South Africa Tonight, the search